The prophecies are crystal clear. Christ will not return to this world until after the restoration of the Jewish people to nationhood. This is the land his God promised him, a crossroads between Asia and Europe, at the heart of where civilization began, a land of wild hills and salt-encrusted shores. Geographically, the ancient Jews were wedged in between the superpowers of Egypt and Assyria, and surrounded by peoples determined to drive them out of the land they believed God had assigned to them. Then, as now, the Promised Land was plagued by constant warfare. In time, Assyria conquered the northern kingdom of Israel. Its 10 tribes are lost to history. Later, the southern kingdom of Judah was overwhelmed by the forces of Nebuchadnezzar, and its people carried off to Babylon in chains. When the Persians crushed Babylon, Abraham's descendants were free to go back to the Promised Land. Then the Promised Land was occupied by Rome. Rome built cities, Rome built baths, Rome built amphitheaters, and Rome brought in her gods. The Roman yoke had become more than Jews could bear. They revolted, and it was a rebellion that took mighty Rome almost 4 years to crush. Now the wrath of Rome came down upon Israel in full fury. There was an explosion of fleeing Jews that reached to every known part of the globe. In their exile, they were sustained by the promise as set down by their prophets. This is what the Lord Almighty says.
I will save my people from the countries of the east and the west. I will bring them back to live in Jerusalem. They will be my people.
But Jerusalem fell into the hands of Muslim powers that Islamized it. For centuries, the land called Palestine was a part of the Ottoman Turkish Empire until the Turks were defeated in World War I. This permitted a trickle of Jews to return to the homeland. Then in the 1930s, from Nazi Germany, came shock waves of Jew-hating that paled the persecutions of the past. Jews were marked with yellow stars. Jewish storefronts were smashed. Synagogues were burnt down, sometimes with their congregations inside. By the millions, Jews were shipped to concentration camps in a program designed to annihilate the Jewish people once and for all. World War II erupted. After Germany's defeat, Jewish survivors of the Holocaust sailed to the shores of their ancient homeland, only to be turned back. Then, after 9 months of debate, the United Nations voted to partition Palestine into an Arab and a Jewish state. On the 14th of May of 1948, the new state of Israel was born, and with it, the first sign pointing to Christ's return. People danced in the streets. They came singing. Jews as different from each other as Morocco is from Manhattan. Jews from the Kasbahs and the souks, from New York's garment district, from hiding places in Amsterdam, from England and Switzerland, from refuge in Sweden, from India and Ethiopia, from Yemen and Detroit. Theirs was a biblical bonding to a land that most of them had never seen.
I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them.
These words of the prophet Amos were spoken some 2,700 years ago. Israel restored. To the world it seemed like the impossible dream, yet one by one the barriers that made it so were removed. Many believe by the hand of God.
Israel is the key to prophecy. If you want proof of the Bible, look at the Jew. The Lord had promised the Jews that if they would turn from him, he would turn from them, and they would be dispersed throughout all the world. This we know took place. But the amazing, miraculous thing is that though they went for almost 2,000 years without a homeland, yet they maintained their national identity. This is something that is totally unparalleled in man's history. No other nation has been able to maintain their national identity for more than 300 years without a homeland.
God not only preserved the national identity of the Jews, but he promised that in the last days he would regather them back into their homeland. In Ezekiel chapter 37 we read, "Thus says the Lord God, Surely I will take the children of Israel from among the nations, wherever they have gone, and will gather them from every side, and bring them into their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land, on the mountains of Israel." Amazingly, this generation has watched the fulfillment of this prophecy.
I'm going to preserve you as an identifiable ethnic national group of people because in the last days I'm going to bring you back into your land. 1948, he brought them back to their land, and they've been increasingly returning to the land of Israel ever since.
The prophet Isaiah said that they that come of Jacob would blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. The nation of Israel has now become the third largest exporter of fruit in the world. God spoke to the mountains of Israel and said they would be planted again, they would be tilled, the land would be sown, and this land that had become so barren would become fruitful and like the Garden of Eden. God said, "I will do it." He did it. You go to Israel today and you see the fields covered with grain, covered with trees, and you realize God has done it.
And what a land they've made of it. The dry, dead bones of the past sprang to life. Thousands upon thousands of trees were planted. Desert was turned into orchards.
Let's take a look at another interesting verse. Way back in the Old Testament, Isaiah 27, verse 6, quote, "Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit," unquote. This was wilderness until a very few years ago. It was uninhabited, and it seemed to be uninhabitable. Go to Israel today. The forests that they planted have brought in increasing rainfall, and Joel 2, verse 23, foretold that. Israel sells flowers to Holland. That's astonishing. I mean, exactly what these scriptures foretold is happening in our day. And you go there, and Israel is blossoming like a bud.
This sign has come in our lifetime. How many more will follow?